We're now on Daf Tzadi, and we're studying Rava's explanation of Rabbi Yochanan. And Rava is going to show that Rabbi Yochanan was bedafka talking about the case of Hasham Mitzora, and that logic and that rule that underlies Rabbi Yochanan's ruling would not apply elsewhere. Ilo chazi liolis chova karvi liolis nedava. In the case of the kvasim that accompany the Omer, or in the case of the Tmidim that are brought daily, is you could always bring them as an olas nidava. So even if they're not kosher as per se, as they should be in their proper category of carbon, nevertheless, now that shalol lishma, you can redirect it and let it serve as an olas nidava. So nothing is really lost, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to replace it anyway, because lo olu l'bayil l'shem chova elahach. But here, in the case of the Hasham Mitzora, you don't have that luxury. Why? Ilo mukmis le b'milse. If you don't maintain the identity of the Hasham as an Hasham Mitzora, then what are you going to do? You're going to bring it as an Idava? There's no such thing as an Asham that comes as an Idava. Asham Idava Meika. And the Rambam, of course, is going to pass like Rava, and he's only going to bring down Rabbi Yochanan in this one case of Hasham Mitzora. Tanya Kavasid Rabbi Yochanan, Hasham Mitzora, Sheshchato Shalo Lishma, O Shalo Nosan Domo Al Gabi Bahonos, right? The Kohen has to apply the dam of the Hasham Mitzora on the big toe and on the thumb. And if it wasn't done so, and therefore the carbon is no longer unique and identified as an Hasham Mitzora, therefore Rezu Olo Legabi Mizbeach, but Viton Nesach. You could only bring it on the Mizbeach. Again, the Bailam is going to have to replace it. The Mitzora is going to have to bring another carbon to replace it. But as far as the carbon itself, it could be brought, but only if there are Nesachim to accompany it. Why? V'tzorich Asham Achilat. All right, okay, fine. So that's Rabbi Yochanan. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Tzadi Omen Aleph. And we're going back to the issue of the midos. Midos are the receptacles that are used to measure the liquids and the solids. And here the Mishnah differentiates between the measures for liquids and the measures for solids. Kol midos sheva migdash hayu nigdashos. All the midos for dry measures would have a rim on top, and whatever you put, the dry stuff that you put in would go over the rim. That's called nigdashos, heaped. Chutz mishal kohen gadol, shoy gudsha letocha, right? Because the measuring of the minchas chavit to the kohen gadol required a larger measure, and therefore anything that would be poured in, even if it went over the top, would go into this larger measure. Nothing was lost. However, midos halach, those kalim, those utensils that we use to measure liquids, is here we have a machlokes. We're going to see that there are three different shitos on this issue. And first we have the Tanakama. The Tanakama says that Beirutzein Kodesh, in the case of liquid measures, anything that goes over the top is Kodesh. We'll try to figure out why. And Midas Hayavish, but in contrast, in the case of a measure that's used for dry measures, Beirutzein, anything that goes up on the top is Chol. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Midos halach kodesh is lefichach berutzeim kodesh. In other words, the liquid measures were subject to meshicha b'shemen hamishcha, and therefore they achieved the status of kodesh. And anything that goes above, that's heaped above the rim, is also kodesh. And we'll soon see that according to Rabbi Akiva, they added Shemen HaMishcha not only on the inside, but also on the outside, and that included the Sfas of this. And Lefichach Berutzein Kodesh, but Midas Yovish Chol, meaning they were only Makadesh it by putting the Shemen HaMishcha on the inside of the dry measures. Lefichach Berutzein Chol. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Lo Mishum Zeh. I agree with you in terms, I accept that distinction between the dry measures and the liquid measures, but not based on what you say, Rabbi Akiva, for a different reason entirely. El halach nekar vayovesh enu nekar. All right, we have to study physics over here, but he's saying that when you pour liquids into a receptacle, then the liquids that were first poured in and settle at the bottom of the receptacle, after you add the second liquid, those liquids on the bottom start moving up on top. Whereas in dry measures, it goes layer upon layer upon layer. Mani, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Now, let's go back to our Mishnah because there's a very important diuk in our Mishnah. It says, Kol hamidos. Kol midos imply that there are many, many midos. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, this doesn't work out according to either Rab Meir or the Rabbanim, because Rab Meir chad godesh. According to Rabbi Meir, there was only one measure and not two. And Rabbanon, chada umachakavi. Rabbanon also agreed that there was only one category of a vessel, just that it was machak, it was leveled, it was flat on top. Whereas Rabbi Meir holds it was godesh. But our Mishnah uses a plural. Rav Chisda li'olam Rabbi Meir, umay kol midos. You have to reinterpret the Mishnah. It doesn't mean kol midos, meaning there are many different measures. It's only one measure. But kol medidos, every time you measure with that one measure, is nidgashos, because we're going according to Rabbi Akiva, who holds that there was a single heaped measure. Weiter. Midos halach berutzehen kodesh. In the case of liquid measures, according to Tanakama, the berutzim are kodesh. But regard to the dry measures, the berutzim are chol. And then the Mishnah goes on to quote Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi. What are they arguing about? Well, we're going to soon see that they all agree, but the question is, how do you come to that conclusion? There are three different ways of arriving at the same exact conclusion. Tanakama, so according to Tanakama, midas halach nimshecha bein mifnim bein mechutz. Midas yavesh nimshecha mifnim velo nimshecha mibachutz. So therefore, since the Mashiach was only on the inside, that which goes outside of the dry measure on the overbrim remains chulin, because that never got the kiddush of the Shemen HaMishcha. Therefore, cannot be mekadesh that which goes outside the kli. Rabbi Akiva savar midas halach nimshecha bein bifnei vechutz. I agree with you, says Rabbi Akiva, that as far as midas halach is concerned, there was a meshicha both on the inside and the outside, and that's why birutzein kodesh. However, here's where Rabbi Akiva disagrees, and he says that midas yavesh lo nimshcha kolikar. There never was a kiddush at all of midas yavesh. Now, I'm not sure why that's so. That dry measures were not anointed at all, and therefore they cannot be mekadesh even that which is inside of it, and certainly not the berutzein. But anyway, both Rabbi Akiva and the Tanakam agree that the flour that's heaped above the rim of dry measures remains chulin. The question is, why is it chulin? According to the Tanakam, it's chulin because there was never a kiddush on the outside of the kli. According to Rabbi Akiva, there was never a kiddush in the kli even on the inside at all. Rabbi Yossi Savar, idi, both the dry and the liquid measures, nimshecha mibifnim v'lo nimshecha b'chutz. Okay, so now you have to figure out, so what's the difference with Beirutzein? And the answer is physics, I call it. Achainutaima delach nekar, right? When you add more liquid to the first liquid that went down, nekar, the one that went down goes up. and therefore it was already inside the kli. And the inside of the kli was nimshach, was sanctified by the Shemin HaMishcha, umigavod demona ka'asi. Right? Migavod means the inside of the kli. So that which you see on the over brim is really coming from the inside of the kli. Hayovesh eno nekar. But when you pour dry, he says it's just one layer on top of the other. And therefore that which comes on the over brim was never inside the kli. And the kiddush was only on the inside of the kli. Frek the Gemara v'chi nekar my hafi. Oh, now we get into a whole nother sugya. Gavra lemay ditzorach kamachaven. I don't get it. Even if you're going to tell me that I accept your physics, Rabbi Yossi, and therefore the liquid on the bottom becomes displaced, that he goes up on top, but nevertheless he doesn't need that liquid that went over the over brim. He only needs to the top of the kli. And therefore when he was Mekadesh with his das, the liquids that are going into the kli, he only had das for that which he needs and not that which he doesn't need. So how can it become kiddush? Even though this bothers me a little bit, because how would he know which? All right, whatever. So we have to derive the following conclusion of Yossi, that kli shais makad shalom midas. Whatever goes into the kli becomes sanctified through the kli. I don't care what your das was. However, Ravina does not accept that. And now we have something very interesting. I don't know if we ever had this before, that the Rabbanon established a kiddush that doesn't really exist. Gzeira shemiyomru motziin mekli sharis l'chol. Wow. People are going to think that if you hold that the over brim is chol, which according to the Torah law it is, because ein makad shemel midas, and his das was not for the over brim, he doesn't need that. But Rabbanan are worried that people will think that that which was niskadesh inside the kli, now you take it out of the kli and it's no longer kodesh. So Rabbanan established that even the overbrim should be considered as kodesh. Mostly Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera asked from a Mishnah, where is this Mishnah? Oh, it's at Mamish 10 blot away. See there, Salechem v'sabazichen li'achar Shabbos. Okay, so here, let's just take a minute of a break here. Okay, so he went ahead and he was maktir, right? The bazichin or the spoons of Levona have to be burnt on the Mizbech. He went ahead and he burnt on the Mizbech,